Hey everyone, this is Courage Raven, and I'm back with my recap and review of Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, Season number 1, Episode number 4, which is titled Josephina and the Holy Spirit. And the episode opens up with Santa Muerte walking down Ensenada, I guess that's how you pronounce it. So Ensenada, Mexico, and she's walking down this old city, and she notices these two Jewish guys talking to each other in Hebrew, and they sit down, and basically they are going somewhere. That's what's being implied. And then Santa Muerte notices this family having a fun time, and the little girl in the family sees Santa Muerte and she smiles at her. And then another car comes in and people come out, and these two people end up shooting everyone. They shoot the two Jewish guys. They also shoot the family for some reason, and Santa Muerte just looks at all of the violence that humans are able to give to each other and do upon other people. It's bad, yeah. So we also get a scene where we get focus on this guy's face. We don't know who this character is, but anyway, I guess he'll be important, and that's why they clearly focused on his face. So this sequence ends with Santa Muerte picking up the little girl who looked at her and walking away with her. And of course, we have seen Santa Muerte not really liking humans, and can you blame her? I don't think you can, because again, humans are capable of so much violence against each other. It doesn't make any sense. Then over at the precinct, we see Santiago, and he's actually surprised that the police ended up rounding up a whole lot of Mexican people, and he isn't happy about it because there are Mexican people behind bars for no reason. And while he's walking in the precinct, he notices Officer Riley beating up a young Mexican kid, and he stops Riley, and he's like, Riley, if you do something bad, I'm going to kill you. So I actually liked seeing Santiago standing up for himself and standing up for his community, because in the previous three episodes, we have seen him being very not standing up for himself and being very passive about what Riley does to him and the others. But anyway, before this confrontation can continue, their boss comes in and he asks Tiago to come into his office. So basically the boss tells him that the reason that they are rounding up so many Mexican men is because they want answers to the murder. Because he is tired of waiting for Luis and Santiago. They haven't really made any progress in the case, so their other option is that they round up the Mexican people and they beat them up during interrogations until someone confesses. And of course, Santiago doesn't like that. But again, I can see where his boss is coming from, because I mean, Santiago really needs to get back to working on the case. And we also know that Luis took a few days off. At the council meeting, we see Charlton being very happy about the German company taking over for the construction of the motorway, and he tells his fellow council person that the motorway will be built soon and the city can heal. And after his speech, Councilwoman Beck chimes in, and we know from the previous episode that Beck is someone who is not going to let Charlton get what he wants. So she showcases this map. And the blue line that you can see is the motorway that Charlton wants to construct, and it goes through the community of the Mexicans, and of course the Mexicans living in the city are angry about it. So a councilwoman Beck says that she has been talking to engineers and she came up with a new route. Now this new motorway will add 4 minutes into the drive, but at least it won't destroy any minority community, and that will allow the city to heal. And while the rest of the council people are happy about the idea, of course Charlton isn't happy and Alex isn't happy. And I really like this shot. Just look at Alex's face. She is going to kill Councilwoman Beck. I can just feel it. And of course Charlton isn't happy about what Beck did. So he storms off, and we all know that when Charlton storms off, he's going to go and hook up with some dude. And Alex doesn't want that for him, because of course someone else can use that as blackmail material. But Charlton isn't listening to her, and he storms off after shouting at Alex. So Lewis is sitting with his friend, and they're talking about the two friends that were murdered by Nazis. And apparently, Lewis needs help because he doesn't really know what to do with the information, and he needs support. So his plan is that he's going to contact this Jewish gangster named Benny. It's Peter Croft's son's birthday, and he's talking to the rest of his German group, his German neo-Nazi group. And this is a character we have seen him previously, and his name is Ackerman. And Ackerman is like, we go out, we give our speeches in parks, only a handful of people listen to us. What we need is a bigger voice. So while a whole lot of the radio stations are owned by Jews, they need to talk to evangelicals, they need to talk to religious groups for them to have access to radio and all of that stuff. So yeah, that's what's happening. Peter ends up noticing Elsa and her son, and he goes over to meet them. And while Peter is talking to Elsa, Ackerman walks up, and of course he starts flirting with Elsa, and Peter doesn't like that. And then they end up introducing Elsa to the rest of the group, and they sing songs, and Elsa is being very friendly with Ackerman, and again Peter isn't a fan of that. And while they're singing songs and having fun, Peter's wife notices what's happening, and she doesn't like that one bit. Tiago ends up going to the house where Molly was hiding away with Hazlitt while she was having an affair with him, and it's a very beautiful house on a very beautiful location. So while he's snooping around, Molly enters as well, and this is where these two have a confrontation. And Molly is like, am I a suspect in your murder investigation? And Tiago is like, yes, you are. I need answers. Were you having an affair with Hazlitt? And Molly is like, yes, I was having an affair with him. Hazlitt allowed me to be someone else just for a few minutes. And I could understand where Molly is coming from, but again, Molly was having an affair with a married man. So I'm not really sure if I feel sorry for Molly, because again, having affairs with married people, I'm not a fan of that. Basically tells Tiago that she doesn't want to see him again, but we all know that Tiago likes her very much, so of course he's going to interact with her again. So over at the birthday, Elsa wants to go to the powder room, and she ends up talking with Peter Croft's wife, and his wife is like, Elsa, I can see you flirting with my husband, however, you don't know who he really is. So I would urge you to find out who he is, ask him about Essen and all of that stuff. And I'm like, Peter's wife, do you know who Elsa is? She's a demonic being. Of course she knows what your husband is up to. Peter notices that Elsa is sad, and he goes into the house looking for him, and he notices that she's upstairs in a room, and he goes inside the room, and Elsa is like, you have a life that I dreamed of and all of that stuff. So she's basically flirting with him, and these two end up hooking up, which was, it was inevitable at this point. Lewis and her friend are at the graveyard, and they're paying respect to their friends. And this is where the gangster Benny ends up, and he wants to talk to Lewis because he doesn't like a policeman asking around for him. And Lewis ends up telling Benny about what he knows. So basically, the Germans are in LA because Hitler's research team is working on a rocket. However, that same plans are being worked on in somewhere by a group of American students at Caltech. And basically the Germans want to steal that information and bring it back to Hitler so that Hitler will have a rocket that can reach London or even New York. And Lewis tells Benny that he needs help. And apparently there's a higher up, Benny's boss, whose name's Mr. Lansky, I guess. He has been helping Jews in Palestine, and Lewis wants Benny's boss to help him here as well because they can't let Nazis win. And at first, Benny is like, I won't be helping you because the Jewish community hasn't been very welcoming to me. And Lewis is like, you know what, you have to do this, you just have to. And Benny walks off. We don't necessarily know if he'll help Lewis or not. Over at the sleepover, Elsa's creepy kid tells a very creepy story to the other children. It's basically about a 12-year-old girl who got kidnapped, and while her father did pay the ransom, the kidnapper had already killed her. He had cut off her arms, her legs, and he had her eyes open wide with wires. And of course the kids are scared, especially Peter's son Tommy. And while everyone is sleeping, this is where Tommy sees the girl from the horror story. And it's a weird sequence. It's just creepy kids being creepy. Find out that Charlton ended up hooking up with the same guy he went to in the previous episode. And he basically isn't paying the guy enough. And I have to say, the eyebrows of this actor, I like them. I like the eyebrows very much. So while these two are talking, there's Charlton goes to leave the room, and he opens the door, and there's Dominic Sherwood's Kurt with the gun, and he ends up killing the guy that Charlton was hooking up with, and he ends up kidnapping Charlton. And I was like, I mean, it was expected. I wasn't expecting the guy to be killed because I, for some reason, wanted him to be part of the story more. But yeah, the guy is dead, and Charlton is kidnapped by Kurt. At the community, we see Mateo and Josefina walking home, and Josefina apparently wants to be a Hollywood actress. And while they're walking home, they encounter Riley, and this is where Riley ends up sexually assaulting Josefina while he's patting her body down to see whether or not she's hiding weapons. And this was the scene where I was like, you know what? Officer Riley needs to die. Like, such people don't necessarily bring anything to the world except for racism and hate and violence. They don't give anything to the community. After the officers leave, Josefina makes Mateo promise that he'll never tell his family, their mother, and all of that stuff. And I feel for Josefina. And with the title of this episode being Josefina and the Holy Spirit, I have been looking forward to seeing Josefina play a bigger role, because in the previous 3 episodes, she just exists in the narrative. Santiago's house, we have Santiago talking to Raul, and Raul is making fun of Santiago because Santiago is telling him about a girl he's hooking up with, Molly. Not necessarily hooking up with, but basically he likes Molly, and Raul is making fun of it because he's making fun of the fact that Santiago likes a white woman. So while everyone is sitting down to eat lunch, this is where they noticed the tattoo, the Pachuco tattoo that Mateo got in the previous episode, and this is where a confrontation occurs. Everyone is arguing, everyone's angry, everyone's disappointed. Santiago tells Mateo not to join a gang, while Mateo is like, I have to join the gang because at least joining a gang gives me something to do. And he storms off away from the house. And Josefina wants to talk to Maria, and Maria is like, Josefina, not now. So Josefina doesn't necessarily have anyone to talk to about her feelings, especially about what she just went through. So she's walking down the road, and this is where she notices a poster about Molly Joanne Finster. So yeah, so I guess the narrative is going to connect Josefina to Sister Molly. Kurt is taking Charlton somewhere. Charlton begs Kurt to let him go. He doesn't want to die, and he basically tells Kurt that he isn't queer. He just doesn't have time to date women, and even when he hooks up with men, he just lets them blow him. It's not necessarily anything gay or whatnot. So Kurt ends up taking him to a motel, and you know what? This is where I was like, yeah, I can see where Kurt was going with this, and yeah, Kurt ends up kissing Charlton, and we have more queer characters in the Penny Dreadful series, you all. And Kurt asks Charlton if he's a top or a bottom, and Charlton's like, I'm a bottom, which duh, and they end up kissing and hooking up. And while they're doing this, we see that Alex has actually paid someone to record a video of Kurt and Charlton getting down and dirty with each other. And yeah, of course, I guess they're going to use this as blackmail material or something. So over at the Pachucos, Mateo we see the guy on the right who was being beaten up by Riley during the interrogation. So he isn't happy with the police. Mateo isn't happy with the police. The girl that, what's her name? Rio, yeah. The girl that Rio is doing a hairdo for, the girl tells everyone that Riley has these young girls with him and he hooks up with them, and he also makes them addicted to drugs so they won't leave him. And this girl knows where Riley is, and yeah, the Pachucos decide that something has to be done. They have to make an example, and so they decide to go after Riley. We're at the Joyful Voices. We see Molly giving a sermon to the rest of to the audience, and Josephina is in the audience. And this is also where there was this instance where it seemed like Molly ended up being possessed by someone, and this reminded me a lot of Vanessa Ives from the original Penny Dreadful series. So I'm not really sure if Molly is supposed to be a conduit or if she's a vessel, but if she has some supernatural link, I'm here for it, because again, I want this series to have more supernatural elements. He ends up meeting with Josephina, and she asks Josephina if she will follow her down the road of the Lord, and Josephina is like, yes, I will. So I guess Josephina is going to end up being part of this Joyful Voices cult or whatever that is. Louis is in his house, and Louis ends up being kidnapped as well. And while that's happening, Rio, Rico, Mateo, and the rest end up going to the room that Riley is in, and they end up attacking Riley. Turns out that it was Benny who kidnapped Louis, and there's this person hanging up from a hook, and this is the same person we saw during the beginning of the episode. His name is Mr. Schiff, and basically he killed the other two Jewish men because he wanted to steal their weapons. It was a supply that was supposed to go to Palestine to help the Jews there, if I remember correctly. But however, he stole that supply and he ended up selling it to the Nazis, and it's just a mess. So Benny wants Louis to kill Mr. Schiff, and because we know that Louis hasn't shot a gun yet, he says no, and Benny ends up killing Mr. Schiff, and he tells Louis that it's a very ominous message, but I guess this means war, that Benny is going to go on full-on war with the Nazis. Mateo ends up killing Riley, and I was like, whoa, Mateo. So Mateo is part of the Pachucos. Josefina is part of the Joyful Voices cult. So basically, Santiago's family is spread all around, and everything is getting more linked up. Alex ends up showing a video that she recorded of Charlton and Kurt hooking up to Mr. Goss, and Mr. Goss is like, yeah, he isn't really surprised, because love can make people do a whole lot of different things, and these two have decided that it's better for Charlton to continue hooking up with Kurt, because that way they can protect him from himself and other people, and it's less riskier compared to Charlton driving around town trying to find men to pay to sleep with him. So Rico, Rio, and Mateo end up dumping Riley's dead body outside the precinct. So I'm really excited to see where that leads, because of course the police isn't going to take kindly to one of their own being murdered like that. And the episode ends with Molly washing the dishes in the kitchen, and Santiago goes to her, and while we have seen Molly being angry at Santiago and telling him that she doesn't want to talk to him anymore, she welcomes Santiago, and the episode ends with these two washing dishes. And again, it links to what Mr. Goss said about love and how love can make you do things. So yeah, that was the episode. I will be doing a written review of this for the Geekiary. The link to that will be down in the comment section below as soon as the review goes up. This was an enjoyable episode as far as my opinion goes. And I guess only 6 more episodes are left for the season. So let's see where it goes. Let me know what you guys thought down in the comment section below. And until next time, stay happy, stay safe, stay blessed. And I'll see you guys later.